Right here, he's guarding her.
The dog?
Yeah, he basically went up to him. He seems pretty friendly, but then there's
Hey,
another
Bubba.
10-7 dog around the corner of the kennel.
Hey, buddy.
I guess Kano's gonna come down as well.
The final confession of Hackman's daughter after her father's death, suspicious signs from the partially embalmed corpse, strange noises during the fateful night, and especially the unusual appearance of two daughters immediately after their father's passing. Where were they during the last months of Gene Hackman's life? Why, when Hackman was alive, did they not contact or inquire about him, yet once he passed away, they quickly appeared before the media with tears full of contradictions? Could this truly be genuine emotion or just a way to distract public attention? Let's listen to the confession of Gene Hackman's daughter after his death to see what truth will be revealed. 1. The distant relationship between Hackman and his daughter. Gene Hackman, the Hollywood legend, is remembered not only for his illustrious career but also for his mysterious private life. In contrast to the image of a talented, strong actor on screen, his family life was far from perfect. Although he was a cinematic icon, as a father, Hackman seemed to have never fully embraced his responsibilities. He had 3 children with his first wife, Faye Maltese: Christopher, 65 years old, Elizabeth, 63 years old, and Leslie, 58 years old. However, for many years, the relationship between Hackman and his children, especially his 2 daughters, was not very good. When he was young, Hackman spent most of his time pursuing his acting career, constantly traveling for movies, leaving behind a family with almost no presence of a father. He once admitted that his passion for cinema had created an invisible gap between him and his children. In a rare interview, he said that he had lost contact with his son very early and expressed regret for not being able to always be with his children during the important stages of their lives. This made many wonder, if Hackman could not spend time with his son, did his 2 daughters have to suffer the same fate? Elizabeth and Leslie grew up in a family with a famous father, but instead of receiving full attention, they seemed to be forgotten. Throughout their childhood and adulthood, they rarely appeared with their father at events or were mentioned by him in interviews. This clearly shows that their relationship was not truly close. However, Hackman remained a mysterious figure to the public, as he rarely spoke about his private life. Therefore, the level of connection between him and his children remains an unresolved question. In the final years of his life, Hackman almost withdrew from the Hollywood spotlight, choosing a secluded life with his second wife, Betsy Arakawa. He no longer appeared much in public and enjoyed his old age in a luxurious villa in Santa Fe, New Mexico. However, one strange thing is that during this time there was no sign that his daughters were there to care for or spend time with him. Even though he had reached the age of 90 and his health was declining, Hackman seemed to receive little attention from Elizabeth and Leslie. This raised many questions. Why, when Hackman was elderly and weak, did his daughters not appear? Where were they in the final months of his life? And did they only begin to show regret after his death? This distance was not only shown through their actions, but also in the statements made by Hackman's daughters after his death. Leslie admitted that she had not contacted her father for many months, yet she still claimed, "We were very close." This immediately caused a contradiction in the public's mind. If there truly was a close relationship, why hadn't they spoken to each other for so many months? If they genuinely cared for Hackman, why weren't they there with him during the most important moments of his life? The appearance of the 2 sisters, Elizabeth and Leslie, after Hackman's death further fueled suspicion. Immediately after hearing the news of their father's passing, both quickly appeared before the media, making emotional statements about the great loss. They said that Hackman was a wonderful father, that they were deeply saddened by his passing. But ironically, their actions afterward were completely contrary to what they had said. 2. Where were Hackman's daughters when he passed away? Immediately after the news of their father's death spread, Hackman's 2 daughters, Elizabeth and Leslie, quickly appeared before the media with emotional statements about the great loss. They expressed their sorrow, praised Hackman as a great father, and showed their pain for not having the opportunity to be with him. However, one notable thing is that they were not present with Hackman at the time of his death. In an interview with DailyMail.com, one of them admitted that she had not spoken to her father for many months. This immediately raised doubts in the public. If they truly loved and cared for their father, why did they not maintain contact? If Hackman was truly as great a father as they described, why didn't the two daughters appear to care for him or at least check on him in his final years? The contradictions in their words and actions became even more suspicious when, just one day after hearing of their father's passing, the two sisters, Elizabeth and Leslie, were spotted dining at a Denny's restaurant in Burbank, California. Exclusive photos collected by DailyMail.com showed them showing no signs of grief, even smiling as they walked out of the restaurant. This action was completely contrary to the image of children grieving their father's loss that they portrayed to the media. If they were truly sorrowful, would they have been able to dine and chat so comfortably? Or is it all just a performance to distract public attention? In response to the public backlash, Leslie spoke out to the press, explaining that the family was still awaiting the results of the investigation into Hackman's cause of death. She stated that there were no signs suggesting any health problems before his passing. This only raised more questions. If Hackman was still healthy, why did he suddenly pass away without any warning signs? And if there were truly no signs of health issues, why had his daughters not contacted him for many months? These questions remain unanswered, but the more the case is examined, the more strange details emerge. Not stopping there, Elizabeth and Leslie also proposed the theory that their father might have died from inhaling carbon monoxide. However, shortly afterward, authorities inspected Hackman's house and concluded that there were no signs of a gas leak. This meant their theory was completely unfounded. So why did they put forward such an unsupported theory? Did they truly believe it, or were they trying to distract the public from some hidden truth? 3 contradictory statements. Immediately after the news of Gene Hackman's death was announced, his two daughters, Elizabeth and Leslie, quickly appeared before the media with emotional statements. They expressed regret and sorrow, stating that their father was a wonderful person and that they would miss him greatly. However, the strange thing is that at the time of Hackman's death, neither of them was by his side. And in an interview with DailyMail.com, Leslie admitted that she had not been in contact with her father for many months. This is an important detail because Hackman was elderly, living a secluded life, no longer connected to Hollywood, and almost isolated from the outside world. An elderly father living a quiet life with few close friends around should have received a lot of attention from his children, especially those who always claimed to love him. But why did Elizabeth and Leslie not take the initiative to contact their father for such a long period if they truly cared about him? The two daughters should have visited and taken care of him more often. This raises an important question. Was their appearance right after Hackman's death truly an act of genuine emotion, or was it simply a formal response to protect their image in the public eye? What further fuels doubts about the sincerity of the two daughters' grief are their actions after hearing of their father's passing. Just one day after Hackman's death was made public, Elizabeth and Leslie were spotted at a Denny's restaurant in Burbank, California. Exclusive photos from DailyMail.com showed that they did not appear to be grieving as they had portrayed to the media. On the contrary, they seemed quite at ease, even smiling as they walked out of the restaurant. The calmness and the lack of any sign of grief immediately led the public to question, if they truly mourned Hackman, how could they so quickly return to their normal lives and casually go out to eat like that? This action was completely contrary to the image of sorrowful children they had portrayed earlier. The public couldn't help but wonder, was their grief truly sincere, or was it just a staged act to distract the public? If they were truly saddened, why did they not show any signs of concern for their father while he was alive, only appearing after he passed away? This question becomes even more significant when considering the contradictions in their statements. Not only were the actions of Elizabeth and Leslie full of contradictions, but even their statements were inconsistent. Leslie claimed that her father was in good health before his death, regularly practicing Pilates and yoga, and showed no signs of serious health issues. However, shortly after, both of them proposed the theory that Hackman and his wife might have died from a carbon monoxide leak. This is a contradictory detail because if Hackman was truly healthy as Leslie said, why did he suddenly pass away in such a mysterious way? And if they truly suspected the cause of their father's death, why did they not show any concern in the days prior? Even more notably, authorities investigated and confirmed that there were no signs of a gas leak at Hackman's estate, completely dismissing this theory. This raises an important question. Why did Elizabeth and Leslie attempt to steer public opinion toward a baseless theory? Were they intentionally trying to mislead to cover something up? And if Hackman's death was not due to toxic gas, what was the real cause? It should be noted that Gene Hackman owned a fortune worth millions of dollars, including many properties and royalties from films he had been part of. If Hackman were still alive, would he have intended to change his will? Is there someone in the family who had a motive to hasten his death? Moreover, the fact that both Hackman and his wife passed away at the same time raises many questions. If this was truly a natural death, why did both of them die in different rooms? What happened at night? 4. Conspiracy theories about Hackman's death. In a case as mysterious as the death of Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa, determining the true cause became a challenge not only for the police but also for forensic experts, medical professionals and psychologists. There were no clear signs of violence, no traces of break-ins, but also no obvious medical reasons that could explain why the couple passed away almost simultaneously. These factors opened up a series of theories, each leading in a different direction, potentially bringing the case closer to the truth or just making it more complicated. One of the first and most concerning theories is that Hackman was murdered. Although the police have not found any clear evidence of criminal activity, some suspicious details have raised doubts about a carefully concealed murder plot. First, the position of Hackman's body when found showed unusual signs. He was discovered lying near a cane and sunglasses, a detail that might seem normal for a 95-year-old man, but it raised several important questions. If Hackman truly fell, could he have moved himself to another room after the accident? Or did someone deliberately stage the scene to make his death appear like an accident? Second, there were signs that the body had been partially embalmed. This could suggest that Hackman had died sometime earlier, but the body was not discovered immediately. In previous cases, delaying the announcement of death was sometimes used to alter the state of the body, blurring forensic evidence that might reveal the true cause. Who could benefit from concealing the time of Hackman's death? Another theory suggests that Hackman may have been attacked using a method that left no clear traces on the body, such as poison or other lethal measures that did not cause external trauma. Professional killers often use methods like injecting poison, suffocation, or obstructing airways in ways that are not easily detectable during a regular autopsy. If this was indeed an assassination, the question arises, who is behind this, and what was their motive? The second conspiracy theory involves Gene Hackman's two daughters. Immediately after Hackman's death, his daughters, Elizabeth and Leslie, quickly suggested that their parents might have died from carbon monoxide poisoning. However, when authorities inspected Hackman's house, there were no signs of a gas leak. This led the public to question, could this be a piece of information deliberately spread to mislead the investigation? There are several reasons why people believe the carbon monoxide poisoning theory may not be true. First, Hackman did not live alone. He was with his wife, Betsy Arakawa. And if there had truly been a carbon monoxide leak, why would both of them have been affected at the same time without any warning signs? Typically, people suffering from carbon monoxide poisoning experience symptoms such as headaches, dizziness, or gradual loss of consciousness before death. But according to initial reports, neither Hackman nor his wife showed any symptoms beforehand, leading many to doubt the validity of this theory. Second, why were Hackman's daughters the first to propose this theory rather than the police or investigators? If they truly did not know the cause of their father's death, why did they quickly make such a conclusion without evidence? Are they trying to steer public opinion in a certain direction to cover up another truth? This raises another question. If it was not toxic gas, what was the real cause? And if someone deliberately spread false information, what was their purpose? Another theory that has been proposed is the family conflicts. One of the basic rules in investigating mysterious cases is to ask who benefits the most from the victim's death. In Hackman's case, the answer may likely lie in the issue of inheritance. Hackman was not only a famous actor but also owned a fortune worth millions of dollars, including many valuable properties and royalties from films he had participated in. If there was a conspiracy behind his death, the question is who would benefit the most. First, Elizabeth and Leslie could inherit the majority of the estate. If Hackman died without a clear will, the law could divide his assets equally among his legal heirs, including his children. But another important question is, did Hackman intend to change his will before his death? If so, who might have had a motive to prevent that from happening? Second, the estranged relationship between Hackman and his daughters raises suspicions about a financial motive. If Hackman and his wife had planned to leave their estate to someone else instead of their daughters, could this be the reason someone might have wanted to hasten his death? Finally, one notable detail is that Hackman and his wife's bodies were found in two different rooms. If they truly died of natural causes, why the separation? Could there have been a third party who staged the scene to make it look like a natural death, but in fact was trying to cover up a crime? Some criminal psychologists have proposed the theory that this could have been a suicide pact, in which both spouses decided to end their lives together. At the age of 95, Gene Hackman might have grown tired of old age, and his wife may have agreed to join him in ending their lives to avoid future loneliness. This is not uncommon in elderly couples with a strong bond. However, there is a major issue with this theory. If they truly had a suicide pact, why was there no suicide note or any sign that they had prepared for it? Additionally, the position of the bodies does not align with a deliberate suicide scenario. Hackman was found near the back door while Betsy was found in the bathroom, with the crime scene seemingly lacking any clear connection. Furthermore, their family and friends confirmed that there were no signs suggesting that either of them was facing serious psychological issues. This makes the theory of a suicide pact less plausible. But if this was not a suicide, could they have been murdered? This theory immediately drew the attention of investigators, as there were several details at the crime scene that could not be explained in the usual way. The front door was left open with no signs of it being locked securely, and the green mobile phone was still in the calling state but was abruptly disconnected, leading many to suspect the presence of a third party. The police conducted analysis on evidence at the scene, including fingerprints, personal items, and electronic data. Some preliminary evidence suggests that there may have been outside interference, but there were no clear signs of a struggle or altercation. 5. A life manipulated before death. Gene Hackman was once one of the brightest stars in Hollywood, a talented actor with 2 Academy Awards and a series of classic works that left a lasting impact on the public. With 2 prestigious Oscars in a career spanning over 6 decades, Hackman became an icon of American cinema. He not only captivated audiences with his versatile acting, but also helped change the world's view on the art of acting. Hackman continued to prove his talent through a series of successful films such as Mississippi Burning, 1988, The Firm, 1993, and especially Unforgiven, 1992, a film that earned him his second Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. In Unforgiven, Hackman played Little Bill Daggett, a ruthless sheriff, a complete contrast to the heroic roles he had previously portrayed. This role demonstrated that Hackman was not confined to just playing heroic characters, but could also take on complex, psychologically rich antagonists. This is what made him a remarkable actor, someone who could deliver outstanding performances on both sides of good and evil. Hackman's influence was not limited to action or crime films, but he also made a strong impression on audiences with his performances in drama and dark comedy films. In The Royal Tenenbaums, 2001, Hackman played Royal Tenenbaum, an eccentric father with a unique lifestyle, bringing a fresh perspective on his diverse acting abilities. This film not only received critical acclaim but also helped Hackman reach a new generation of audiences. However, despite his illustrious career, Hackman was a very private person. He disliked appearing too often in the media and rarely shared details about his personal life. In many interviews, he expressed that he was not interested in fame and only wanted to focus on his acting work. Nonetheless, his fame still made it difficult for him to maintain a normal life. Hackman married Faye Maltese in 1956, but their 30-year marriage ended in 1986. They had 3 children together, but according to many sources, Hackman did not spend much time with his family due to his busy career. This led to an irreparable gap between him and his children, especially in his later years. After the divorce, Hackman remarried Betsy Arakawa, a classical pianist, and lived a quieter life away from the noise of Hollywood. After decades immersed in the glory of fame, Hackman made a decision that few could have predicted. He completely left Hollywood, refusing all public attention, and lived a reclusive life, disconnected from the world. His sudden disappearance from the silver screen in 2004 shocked the entertainment industry. A man who had conquered millions of audiences now chose a secluded life, leaving no trace in the media, no interviews, no red carpet appearances, and not even any social media accounts. Leaving Hollywood was not an easy step, especially for a veteran actor like Hackman who had dedicated his life to the arts. But for him, it seemed that the spotlight no longer brought the excitement it once did. He chose Santa Fe, New Mexico, a remote area where the raw nature, cold, dry climate, and tranquil life became the perfect cover, allowing him to escape all the distractions from his past. There he was no longer Gene Hackman, the Hollywood superstar, but simply an ordinary man living in seclusion with his wife, Betsy Arakawa. But was this truly freedom, or was it a carefully orchestrated isolation under the $3.3 million roof? Hackman nearly severed all connections with the outside world. He did not use a mobile phone, did not have an email address, and even longtime friends could not contact him directly. All information, from messages from family members, collaboration requests from Hollywood, or simply a call from an old friend, had to go through Betsy. This woman was not just his wife but also the one who controlled every aspect of Hackman's life. She arranged meetings, managed relationships, and decided who could approach him. Anyone who tried to contact Hackman had to wait for permission from Betsy, and not everyone received that opportunity. Not only did she control the information, but Betsy also set up a secret hand signal system between the two. A hand gesture, a raised eyebrow, or a small finger movement could be a signal for Hackman to know that he needed to leave a conversation. This relationship was not simply about normal concern or protection, but it seemed to have turned into a form of invisible control. When Hackman had a bicycle accident in his later years, Betsy even disguised herself as a nurse to avoid being spotted by paparazzi while entering and leaving the hospital. This extreme caution showed that Betsy was not only protecting Hackman from the media, but also seemed to be shielding him from the world itself. However, what is notable is that Hackman himself gradually accepted this control. Those who met him in his later years remarked that Hackman was no longer the vibrant, strong man he once was. He no longer had meetings with friends, did not attend any events, and seemed to have no desire to escape from his private world. This raises questions. Did Hackman truly accept this reclusive life, or was he being so subtly isolated that he did not realize he was gradually losing his freedom? The small stories about Hackman's everyday life further highlight Betsy's meticulous control. One of the details circulated among his old friends is that Hackman had to secretly enjoy a muffin or a waffle when Betsy was not around. For a man who once had everything, having to sneakily eat a favorite treat only when his wife was absent is a deeply contradictory image. This raises an important question. Was Betsy's protection out of love, or had it become an inescapable form of control? Some people believe that Hackman truly chose this life. He wanted to stay away from Hollywood to have a life free from interruptions, and Betsy was simply the one who helped him fulfill that wish. But there are also other opinions, particularly from old friends, who believe that Betsy gradually controlled Hackman's life in a way that he himself didn't even realize. Without Betsy's excessive intervention, Hackman might have been able to maintain some degree of independence, stay in contact with friends, or at least not become as isolated as he was in his later years. In the age of social media, news of his death quickly spread across various online platforms. Millions of fans from all over the world expressed their grief and regret by sharing memories, photos, videos, and famous quotes from the films he had been a part of. A wave of remembrance spread, turning platforms like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok into places where millions expressed their respect for a legend. On Twitter, the hashtags #GeneHackmanForever and #Legend That Never Fades became global trends, attracting millions of posts from his admirers. Many shared classic scenes of Hackman, unforgettable lines he delivered on screen, and articles analyzing his great career. Some posts even expressed doubts about the cause of his death, questioning the unusual details at the scene and calling for a more thorough investigation. YouTube and TikTok quickly filled with tribute videos to Hackman. Documentary clips, old interviews, and his brilliant acting scenes were shared with millions of views. Content creators made in-depth analyses of Hackman's career, from his early years in Hollywood to the iconic roles that made him a legend. Despite the controversy surrounding his death, no one can deny that Gene Hackman is a symbol of cinema. He didn't need to try to be a star because his talent spoke for itself. And even with the many mysteries surrounding his personal life, the legacy he left for the film industry will remain forever. 6 new developments in the case. The police are still investigating the case. Some new evidence may help clarify Hackman's death. One of the important leads the police are focusing on is testimony from neighbors living near Hackman's estate in Santa Fe. According to some witnesses, the night before Hackman and his wife were found dead, they heard strange noises coming from the house. Some described it as a loud thud, as if something had fallen to the floor, while others claimed they heard what sounded like an argument or faint shouting. What is notable is that these noises occurred around 11 p.m., a time when Hackman would typically have been asleep. If this is true, the question arises, what really happened at that time? Did someone break into Hackman's house, or was this just an ordinary accident? The police are currently gathering security camera footage from the surrounding area to check for any signs of intrusion into Hackman's estate. Additionally, they are reviewing Hackman's call logs from that night to determine if he had contacted anyone before his death. An important part of the investigation is the forensic analysis. The forensic doctors have completed the autopsy and found some unusual points on the bodies of Hackman and his wife. The most suspicious finding is that Hackman and his wife's bodies showed signs of partial embalming, indicating that they might have died several days before being discovered. If this is the case, why didn't anyone realize Hackman had passed away earlier? Additionally, Hackman's body showed no signs of severe trauma, raising suspicions that he may have died from a cause that left no external traces, such as poisoning or asphyxiation. One of the theories the investigators are considering is the possibility that Hackman was poisoned. Tissue samples from his body have been sent to the lab to check for any traces of poison in his blood. If traces of poison or a foreign substance are found in Hackman's body, it would be the most important evidence to determine whether this was a murder. Although there were no external wounds, tests revealed suspicious marks on Hackman's fingernails, possibly indicating a struggle or scuffle before his death. The police are currently analyzing DNA from these samples to determine if anyone else had direct contact with Hackman at the time of his death. Another key focus of the investigation is reviewing Hackman's financial records to check for any suspicious changes in recent times. For someone who owned a fortune worth millions of dollars, examining his finances is crucial. One of the biggest questions is whether Hackman changed his will before his death. If he intended to adjust his inheritance rights, who would be affected, and who would benefit the most? The police have requested to examine legal documents related to Hackman's estate to determine if any changes were made recently. If so, this could help determine whether anyone had a financial motive to stage a murder. In addition to examining the will, the police are also reviewing Hackman's recent financial transactions to see if any money was transferred unusually. Has someone withdrawn a large sum of money from his account? Did Hackman make any suspicious investments or payments before his death? Notably, some insider sources have indicated that Hackman had plans to sell some of his properties. If this information is true, then who would benefit from these assets after his death? The investigation into Gene Hackman's death is still ongoing, with many unresolved details. A series of important questions continue to puzzle the police, especially regarding the true cause of his death. Did Hackman really die due to old age, or was there someone who intervened in his death? The signs of partial embalming on his body suggest that someone may have tried to conceal or distort the actual time of death. Additionally, the testimony from neighbors about strange noises the night Hackman died raises suspicions that someone may have broken into or been involved in this incident. If Hackman was poisoned, who was the perpetrator, and what method did they use to cause his death without leaving clear traces? More importantly, the role of his daughters in this case remains unclear. Did they truly know nothing, or is there something they are trying to hide? All of these questions are still awaiting clear answers from the authorities. But one thing is certain, Hackman's death is not as simple as it appears. What do you think about this case? Leave your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next analysis.